Hello.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hey Raymond, thank you so much for joining. I know it's been hectic going through YC, building a product and whatnot, but thank you again for doing the podcast with us.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. Thanks for being flexible on timing and everything. I know that we had to work around a bunch of travel stuff, but yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's great to have you on. So me and Greg usually we could spend 30 minutes or an hour or whatever. We'll work around your schedule, but I actually wanted to have you on. I felt like you're building something really cool and unique and just a really cool product. I actually have it right here. So this is
Oh, nice.
that right there.
Oh, very nice, very nice.
Like an AI camera, Greg, that like tracks you. And they have all these great features. Like, I mean, Raymond can go into it, but I guess in the podcast, we are recording, but in the podcast, like everyone uses cameras. It's such a big market for cameras. And I feel
It
like
really is.
you are a founder creating like the future of cameras and like the using that technology and everything you're using and building the software you're building. It's super interesting. But I guess maybe we could like go into your history a little bit and Greg can
Before
introduce.
we jump into that,
Sure.
how's my audio though? You think it's better with a headset on or just how it is now? Is it fine?
I think it's good.
I think it's all
It's
right.
okay.
Yeah, you
All
sound
right.
great actually.
Oh, it's fine. Okay. All right. Good. Nice to meet you, Raymond. I'm Greg. I'm friends with Daniel. We've got this podcast on growth that we've been doing for a number of years. When did we start it, Daniel? 2014 or
2017. So it's been a
2017?
while.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice,
5 years.
nice. Are you is it focused on any like particular topic or is like startups in general?
I think
It's called On Growth. So the idea is like capture stories that inspire people, and we're particularly interested in like entrepreneurship, and you're right up that alley. And then we've also, yeah, sorry, we also have interviewed Stanford professors, that type of thing. That's where I studied. I saw you went to UC Berkeley. So yeah, Daniel, should we start it off or?
yeah, I guess we could start the podcast now and it's recording and everything, but why don't we start it off and
Okay.
like you could give us an intro of like who you are and like some of your history and like why you're doing what you're doing and then like where you see yourself going. But I guess just to start it off, like tell us who you are.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the founder at Lumina, and Lumina is a company that's trying to build the kind of the future home office. We think that a lot of people are moving from working from an office into working at home, and people are spending a lot more time at home, and they want better, more interesting products to work with while at home. I started a couple companies in the past. I started out with a company called O Shirts back in high school. We sold T-shirts. We can get into that later. Later on, started a company called Scalable, which also was in the printing space. Ended up it was if you ever go on Facebook and seen those T-shirt ads, we were responsible for a pretty big percentage of those ads. It was actually during my time at Scalable that when everyone was moving over to full remote, that got the inspiration to start Lumina.
Nice. I guess like maybe we can go back to like your t-shirt days. That sounds like a really interesting history. So like when did you get the entrepreneurial bug to like become a founder or like what was it that made you want to do that?
I guess it was frustration. It was when I was 16, I was ordering T-shirts for a high school tennis club. I didn't have a big budget. I wanted a shirt. I remember it was like a T-shirt it was a black T-shirt. I was like, it had like this tennis ball, like three-colored logo, like a flame, like it's like a flaming tennis ball. And I just had that vision. I really wanted that design, but everywhere I looked, it was too expensive. I couldn't afford it. And I remember just doing some back of the napkin math on how much a T-shirt ought to cost. And I just thought these prices are just way too high. They're unreasonable. And from that, just got this urge to do something better. And I started a company that sold lower cost custom printed T-shirts.
I saw you got up to 10 million t-shirts sold. How did you go from, just your own tennis club to this massive financial success?
Well, it started out really slow. It was just me. It started out with me going to other clubs of high school and saying, "Hey, like, do you want to buy T-shirts at lower prices?" And At the very beginning, what would happen is people would say, "Oh yeah, sure. Here's my design," and I would find these suppliers wherever I could. I would look, overseas in China. I looked in India. I looked at the U.S. and I just found whatever supplier I could find and help hook them up with a lower cost product. And after doing that a couple of times, I learned some patterns. I found that certain steps often took a long time, and I learned why many printing companies are expensive. By the way, it was because there's this back and forth process of collecting artwork and formatting everything to be just there's a lot of steps between when a customer has a vision and kind of put something on an order to when you actually get it to the printing press. And I basically started building some software to automate those steps. And by doing some of that, I was able to lower prices, and eventually I built a website that did that at a larger scale. It was a real grind. A lot of tinkering with Google AdWords, a lot of SEO work early on, but over the what was it, like 4 or 5 years that I focused my attention on it, it grew from nothing to about $10 million in annual revenue.
That's incredible. So what were the most important channels for you to make those sales and like scale it up? Was it like Google SEO, that type of channel?
Yeah. For this business, it was mostly Google. I think it's kind of hard to run Facebook ads for this type of thing because for the most part, people who want to order t-shirts know you want them to be searching custom t-shirts or t-shirt printing on Google and advertising there. It's very hard to just advertise to the masses and hope that some of them want to place a 50 shirt order. It's hard for Facebook to detect exactly who wants to do that. So Google worked really well for us.
This is a softball question, but what advice would you give yourself as a high school student? I read your article on the advice to high school students.
Oh, I would say it's to go and build things. I think when I talk with a lot of my peers right now, people who are, engineers or product managers or, doctors or whatnot, and people just don't have time right now. Once you're well into your career and you have deadlines and all these rent to pay and all these other obligations, it's really hard to have the time to do something crazy and take risks. I actually think that when you're in high school and college, it's like that's actually the best time to do something crazy and just build stuff.
What was the moment when you had that spark, the inspiration? You mentioned in your article about the epiphany of the world is editable. When was it that you had that epiphany?
I think that was sometime in high school. I think one thing that contributed to that, I'm not sure if I wrote about this or not, was when I was 14 or 15, I visited China for 2 months, and I saw the incredible amount of construction that was happening there, and that was really inspiring to me. It felt a little more concrete than there's a lot of kind of digital construction happening in Silicon Valley, but it's harder to really. It doesn't really hit you viscerally. But in China, it just something about that just really inspired me. And so when I came back, I just felt like I wanted to build stuff. I just had to do it.
So it was like physical buildings that just inspired you, and like how massive they were building their infrastructure. Like what year was this? This was, I guess, like around what time frame? Like,
oh man, what is this? I'm 31 now. 15 years ago, 16 years ago. So this is like peak China building years, like 2007 or something like that. And it was just it just felt like so much stuff was happening there. There's so many new businesses. Every week I'd walk around, I'd see a new business get launched.
What are aspects of the Chinese culture that you saw that you think is maybe missing over here, like maybe competitive advantages they have that we might want to adopt? I'm just curious. I don't know much about Chinese culture.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I feel like I would give a different answer a few years ago compared to right now. But I would say I think people are people see, everyone sees China's economic growth in China. I think in the US, it just the like it's very evident in tech, and in certain industries, it's super obvious. But in China, I think everyone sees it, and that I think causes everyone to. I think it totally my opinion, but I think on average, it causes people to work a little bit harder and be a little bit more inclined to want to start something new themselves.
So there's like a, everyone talks about Silicon Valley. It's like in the minds of the world. It's like, but you're saying that there's a lot of entrepreneurship outside of, I mean, people are starting businesses everywhere. I was listening to this audiobook, and they were talking about how, all these entrepreneurs are across the globe, but Silicon Valley just takes the idea and figures out how to scale it. Like someone will build a good idea in like Michigan, and then someone in Silicon Valley will take that idea and like scale it. But it seems like in China, I guess there's a lot of that. Like, and the government, I don't know, maybe the government's backing that entrepreneurial like motivation to like create stuff. But really, everyone, at least because I and Greg live near Silicon Valley, it's like everybody's in this micro bubble here where like people are just doing stuff, building stuff. How do we scale?
Yeah.
But that's not actually the world. Like, I think China is actually one of the most entrepreneurial places because they are producing so much stuff for everyone at such a rapid pace that there's something magical happening there. Also, that like, I don't know because I've never been there, but living in Silicon Valley, I see it. I just see people thinking big vision. It seems like that permeated in you and created this drive in you, which frankly, like, Silicon Valley with Y Combinator and Sequoia Capital, and, you're in San Francisco and you see the Salesforce building, you're like, this can be done.
Yeah.
That's what I see all day long, like living in this area. I guess in China, that something happened in you when you visited there, that experience happened. But
I think part of it was I started, the first company was 2007, 2008, which was like before YC and everything really was as big as it is now. I think if I were 3 years younger, Y Combinator would have been my number one inspiration. But just because of timing, I think that visit to China was my thing.
So they're like a Y Combinator. They're creating all cool stuff like at a rapid pace. And that you came back here and just said, I got to do this also. It created this like inspiration for you to create a t-shirt company.
A t-shirt company. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What were some of the most important things you learned starting your first two companies, the U shirts and the Scalable that you're applying now to Lumina?
Yeah, I think first there are just a lot of basic skills, how to create a website, how to create a landing page that converts, how to do search engine optimization, how to launch product. But I think the broader thing is just the understanding of what the life cycle of a company looks like, from coming up with an idea to putting together your MVP to finding that there might be something here, let's make this more robust, and to scaling that up and ramping up, building a team and ramping up marketing budgets and all that. So having seen that happen twice now makes third time, I just feel like I know what to expect right now. In terms of learnings, though, I think my last two companies were pretty low margin companies. Lumina is a higher margin company. That's much nicer. I'm much more aware of. I'm very aware of what kind of the relationship between kind of gross margin, operating expenses, and how that might change over time. So I guess I'm a lot more financial. Previously, it was much more just product driven and just wanted to come with something that put something to the world that I liked. But now there's like this kind of business, financial savvy that goes into it.
When you talk about margins, I feel like drop shipping is a thing now. Like people don't create the product until you actually buy it. So like it allows the creator to not have that burden of like having all that inventory. Like, click buy, then they actually build it and ship it out. Like, I guess you didn't have like you were a drop shipper in a sense, like you had to get the payment, create the t-shirts, ship the t-shirts, or you did it differently than that? Like, because you were doing it at scale, 10 million t-shirts. It's a lot.
Yeah, with OO Shirts, so OO Shirts was it was essentially a drop shipping business. It was kind of an advanced drop shipping business in that there's like a customization portion to it, right? So people would have to upload their design, and we have to process it in a certain way that was just a really clean package we can give to the drop shipper, which is really a printing company. But that business model is super popular. I mean, arguably, a lot of companies are fundamentally drop shipping companies. A lot of D2C companies we see today are kind of just white labeled drop shipping companies. So I think the business model is super common, even if many companies don't call themselves that.
Lumina, I get the sense is not a drop shipping company. Because you guys have the physical device that like it's hard to create this in like a week. In my mind, it's like a lot of pieces. And I mean, you could create it in a week, but
yeah,
you always want a couple on hand to ship them quickly for the good experience, right? Waiting 3 months for a camera frustrate people for.
Yeah. It's we did try to reuse as many components as possible. We tried to get as much stuff that's just off the shelf ready as we could. For example, we use a Sony CMOS sensor. We use some of our like a lot of the internals are just off the shelf stuff that we were able to piece together and install custom firmware and software for. And so we try to make it so as much of the magic as possible is done on stuff that is not custom hardware.
Interesting. So you're like all of this, you took like a lot of pieces across different industries and put it into this device instead of just making. I've never created a physical device like this. This is like all new to me. But I noticed like a lot of entrepreneurs who build or ship physical things tend to do it over and over again. Like an example is Tony Fadell. Tony Fadell helped create like the precursor to the iPod, and then he created the iPod, and then he created Nest, and now he's doing like other types of physical hardware. You're in that same light, like where you created t-shirt company, you understood the logistics of the physical hardware, right? Was that part of the reason why you wanted to do like a smart AI software camera? Like, was that part of the reason because you knew about the logistics of that, or that didn't really come as part of it?
I think partially. I try to, when I think about new things to work on, it mostly comes from problems that I personally face. So the t-shirts were just, t-shirts are too expensive. And with Lumina, it was actually, I wanted DSLR quality, and I didn't want a DSLR. And it just seemed like the webcams out there there just wasn't any progress on webcams. Like the most popular webcam on the planet right now, and even to this day, is still the Logitech C920, which was launched, I think it was in 2011. That's when the iPhone 4 came out. So super out of date product, but they're selling hundreds of millions of dollars per year of this stuff. It feels like something's wrong about that. I think part of it is just a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in Silicon Valley, just don't want to touch hardware right now. So you don't just see as much innovation in this area. But I thought it wasn't so much, I've experienced building, electronics. It was more of that. This is a problem that I have that I feel like ought to be solved in some way, and wanted to build something from there.
You mentioned in your article about the importance of surrounding yourself by peers that are like-minded, that can support you, as well as like adults, like mentors, that type of thing. Could you tell us about some of your strategies to surround yourself in such a supportive environment?
Oh gosh, so this is actually this is something I'm really working. I don't think I do a great, even though I've written about it. I don't think I do a great job at it. And I'm trying. I'm actually trying. One of my resolutions this year is to make new friends in this area. But I think what I've done in the past is try to get together with different friends who work on who have share something that's weird that is in common with myself. So, for example, my past company or my past two companies were both bootstrapped, and even Lumina is kind of almost At least we haven't taken institutional funding. We've just taken some angel checks. So was previously part of this like really nice bootstrappers group, and it's a group of maybe 5 of us that we'd meet every month or so just to talk about how we were doing.
Is that
so that's one suggestion. Yeah, find something that's weird about yourself and find other people with the same weird attribute.
Is that an online group, like kind of a mastermind on Zoom, or do you meet up for coffee or something like that in person?
It was in person. And yeah, COVID kind of changed a lot of this stuff, but I think the overall formula still kind of stands. And right now I'm trying to find other ways of doing this. I've wanted to do is write more. I think every time I publish some kind of post, even if it doesn't get a huge amount of attention, there's always some people who reach out, and it's very much like a bad signal for people who really resonates with to reach out and get in contact.
Sure, it's important to share your wisdom. I'm curious why you moved to Austin. I know you grew up in the Bay Area here. What was your thinking on that?
So I spent my entire life in the Bay Area, and in during COVID, everything was closed here, and I just wanted a change of scenery. And yeah, I wanted to try something as different as possible, and then picked Austin. Right now, I'm actually I'm currently in San Francisco. I'm taking this call from San Francisco, and I'm spending a lot of time back here again. And I think I'm going to be doing some kind of split, kind of nomadic situation going forward. Yeah, I wanted to change, but I at the same time I think that there's if you really want to do startups, it's probably best to be in San Francisco.
Even now, like I live here. I'm asking you because you've seen, Texas. Like, even now, you feel like it's better to move back here for startups, or has it changed like a lot, or no? Like, why is it better? I mean, I have my answer, but I'd like to know like your thoughts on like why.
I think even though it's not, the margin at which it is better is not as large as it was before. I think it's still the best place. Just there's this critical mass of people who are into startups, and I don't think that, at least of the places I've been and of the people I've met everywhere, maybe I could meet more people, but I just found that the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, has just the concentration is there, and it's unlike anywhere else I've lived. And I also have a couple of friends who moved to Seattle or other places during the pandemic, and they seem to have similar experiences.
And you grew up here, so like you've seen the good, the bad, the ugly with San Francisco and the Bay. It's probably in your blood more than most, because like I'm a transplant from New York. Like, is there a benefit? I look at all the kids that grow up in the Bay in San Francisco. Is there a benefit like to you growing up here? Like, did you actually feel it, like the energy, or like were you oblivious to like the startup scene? And then one day, you went to China and you're like, whoa, this is like sometimes I don't think they realize where they are. Like, they're just so young and happy and living their life, like 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds. I'm like, you're literally in a tech mecca. But did you feel that? Did you feel like that?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think I was. I think I just took it for granted. I was watching this video on Elon Musk earlier today, actually, and he was talking about how his kids are totally unimpressed by him. They're just used to him, and I feel the same way about living here. I mean, I totally took it for granted. After visiting Austin, actually, how unique Silicon Valley is actually really, really something. It made me want to spend more time here again.
You said you're going to go between there and Texas. Like, why go back? I guess you have a house there, or?
Yeah. I think I'll be splitting time between. We have some work stuff there, so I'd say I'm splitting time between Texas and here, and probably New York. And I'll just be living a pretty nomadic life, I guess.
I'm curious too about when you were starting Lumina. Looking back at your experiences with T-shirts and Scalable, what were some of the things on your do not do list that you wanted to avoid? Like, for example, for your first two startups, you didn't take on any VC money. Was that kind of still there? Do not take on VC money. You mentioned margins, like do not choose like a low margin product. Don't work with X supplier. I'm kind of curious what were some of the key thoughts you had?
I don't think there's anything that was kind of explicitly do not do. I mean, with in regard to like bootstrapping versus VC, I think bootstrapping is slightly underrated right now. In that, I think we should be open to both. Many companies don't require funding. Many great companies don't require funding. If you start a software company that has potential to make, I don't know, 3 million ARR and that's it, it'll never get funding. But it might be a great business for you to start. I do think, when you talk with founders or just people in Silicon Valley, and you say, "Oh, I work at a startup," the default question of what stage or how far along are you? And it's always asked. Just always the reference point is always kind of VC funding level, and I don't think that's particularly healthy. But I think it just you just do what's best for the company, almost from a first principles perspective, like just what is this a type of company that requires funding or not, and just go with that. For the past companies I've worked on, I'd say it leans toward bootstrap situations. I think for Lumina, if we get to a certain critical mass, I think we're going to start attracting a lot of institutional interest. I don't think we're at that point just yet. I think for hardware companies, especially in spaces that appear commodity-ish like ours, I think you have to prove yourself a little bit before getting to a stage where the interest before it starts really making sense.
So don't just raise money to raise money is what you're saying, because that's what a lot of people in Silicon Valley go towards. Do you think is the rest of the world, they're just doing I would say small businesses primarily, that sort of thing. So they don't, outside of the Valley, that may not be the case, but maybe Shark Tank is that show is just getting across the United States. People are starting to think more, I need to get funding for my pizzeria. Right?
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense though, but because how do you scale a pizza? I mean, some of them can scale, but I guess another question for you, the product that you built, you're integrating a lot of software into it, and the software is a huge component of the actual product. Everyone is using Zoom remotely to see family, to meet with people. What's broken right now with it? And you fixed one thing, when you move your head with your product, it actually tracks your head. And I noticed that wasn't a thing until a year ago or 2 years ago. People are starting to realize, oh, if I move 5 feet away, you're centering the person. Where do you see the future in 5 years? People didn't really use Zoom that much before the pandemic. It wasn't a thing. It was becoming a thing, but it wasn't really a thing. And now it's just oh, let's do a Zoom or a FaceTime or a this or that. What is missing in the future of remote work?
Yeah, I think I have a short term and long term answer to that. I think short term, we do facial framing, and that's a good that's a feature a lot of people like. But there's also just having good lighting. We through software you could make it look like someone has better lighting than they actually do. You can make it so it looks like their colors are more vivid. It's kind of the effect you want to achieve is kind of like portrait mode on an iPhone, right? It's just you look better than you actually look in that scene. And I think that's possible through good software, and we're continuing to work on that. Longer term, this is the question that we think a lot about, and one way I think about this is right now most people spend maybe an hour a day in their car, and they pay $30,000 for a car. But for remote workers, they spend 10 hours per day in their office. Probably are willing to spend a lot more on the office than they currently are spending. Except the value, nothing is if you buy a 10 times more expensive desk, you're not getting something that's 10 times better. You're just maybe made of some kind of exotic material that doesn't really matter. But with that kind of additional budget, what kind of interesting things can we use that to build? And that's the kind of question that we think a lot about. So on our roadmap are products like a smart desk. I'm not sure if you checked out our desk landing page and our launch materials there. So that one is the desk. Another, we're thinking about building smart lighting for your office. Lighting that kind of makes you feel, that kind of supports your circadian rhythm, that adjusts to the sunlight that's out there, adjusts to your webcam settings, and potentially other ergonomic type products like your chair. I think if you make through software, you could build a chair that's the most ergonomic chair out there. But still in the early phase on a lot of this stuff. We're just a year in right now after we've just only been shipping for a year now. So still very early on for the company, but I think there's a lot of different directions we can go from here.
How do you see metaverse type interactions playing out in remote work? Like, for example, do you have any favorite metaverse apps that you're using? I personally was playing around a little bit with the Meta Horizons, but are you experimenting with that at all, or do you have anything you're envisioning, or are you just using Zoom basically?
Yeah, I think we're mostly thinking in the confines of just how corporate communications are done today. So like Zoom and Google Meets and whatnot. But I do think the general direction should be getting to a point where meeting online is as good as, feels as realistic and as engaging as meeting in person. Hopefully through the products that we build and some other breakthroughs, hopefully that'll happen one day.
Well, for the smart desk, I mean, it's kind of a cool idea. Like, you're basically creating a huge, I mean, maybe down the road it'll be a huge like iPhone screen for like more data, because you can only put so much stuff on your desk, right? Like,
yeah.
Papers or your iPad or 2 laptops or like one big monitor or 2 big monitors. But like, there's parts of the desk that are always exposed. Like, you guys actually put like a screen on the desk? Is that how that?
Yeah. So the Lumina desk is we're calling it a digital desk, and the question we ask is how can we make it so your desk makes you a lot more productive. The way we're still we're still developing the product right now, but the current plan is to put a screen in the desk that lets you install kind of apps that connect with different things on your computer. So you might have a Twitter app on your desk, and instead of having that Twitter tab that's always open on your browser, just have it on your desk. We designed a desk to be kind of have this matte kind of not this finish that doesn't really draw the eye that much. But like if you look down on it, you should be able to see it clearly. But it shouldn't. If you're just looking at your screen, it shouldn't distract you from it. But it should just have a lot of information on it. That's just things that you can just check in the corner of your eye whenever you need.
I mean, that's a VC funded feeling I get. It's like, that's a lot of hardware you have to build. So doing that in a bootstrapped way is really, you're doing it really like efficient, like, right? Like, to build something like that takes time and hardware is expensive. But I guess like pulling pieces together that are existing, it's like Legos, I guess, a little bit in a sense. Or am I off with that? Like, just talking through it, it's like such an interesting concept.
Very difficult.
Yeah, and without funding, it makes it even more like. But sometimes with that like non-VC funded constraint, you can build really efficiently without like, oh, we should get the best screen ever. But people may not want that on their desk. They may just want like something, right, like that just works. But I mean, that's a really like unique. I've actually never seen anyone do that before. Like, in that, I've seen like the Microsoft, big table type things, but those are like not actually affordable right now for people. They're
not affordable, and it doesn't feel like it's kind of a clunky product. But all the demos, they show features that aren't that useful. Like, you could put a cup down and it shows the shape of the cup. Like, just like totally useless features. I think that the concept of a desk, the concept of surfaces that are digital in your house, is it. I think it's a fundamentally sound concept. It's really interesting. To some extent, I think Microsoft made it kind of ruined it for everyone by making it so unsexy and uncool. But it's fundamentally, I think, could be a very useful, interesting thing. And I could see a future in which a lot of things in your house just have some kind of display in it. And yeah, but then the desk, I think, is a really good natural place to start.
I'm wondering if you could tell us about your recent startup, the $5 million in sales you've already been able to achieve. That's incredible. I'm wondering if you could be so kind to share your secrets with us on how you were able to make those kind of sales. Like, was it sort of growth hacking techniques like Google SEO, landing pages? I mean, what kind of advice would you give a friend if they had an idea for headset or some other product not competing directly with you, but
Yeah, you're talking about Lumina, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So I think the place to start is to have a product that's interesting in some way. We came out with Lumina at a time in which there are a lot of people that are buying webcams. A lot of people wanted better webcams. A lot of people were frustrated with the quality of the webcams out there. And so when we launched, more or less, that there's a lot of interest that came right away. Last year was actually a very hard time for e-commerce. A lot of companies saw a lot of e-commerce companies saw declining growth. But despite that, just because our product was so unique, kind of value proposition that spoke to a lot of people, we were able to defy that and grow just a huge amount in that first year. In terms of advice to kind of growth advice, I guess it's just a generic advice I can give is try a lot of different channels, test aggressively, be relentless on your advertising creative, and yeah, just be really relentless on just testing.
What are some of your favorite tools for testing? For example, maybe Fiverr to create content, or WordPress to have your landing page, or what's your sort of stack?
So I don't use that much software actually. So we use Amplitude for analytics. We use Figma to make designs and share designs. There's a lot of different. The reason I say I don't use that much software is that there's a lot of different new e-commerce startups that do kind of advertising optimization and attribution. And you could have a lot of e-commerce marketers, I think, have just like this big list of SaaS tools that they use. And I've found a lot of those to be not that useful. And I just still prefer just sticking with, just to tracking stuff in a spreadsheet. It works just fine. But yeah, I think I use pretty basic tools.
What about just like the basic landing pages, or is it like a WordPress thing, or you don't? I assume you don't make like raw HTML and some server that you run.
Our landing pages are using raw HTML. Actually, we use Shopify as our backend, and it just we make these are all custom landing pages.
Awesome. I know we ran over a little bit, Raymond, but yeah, no, this was amazing. I guess we usually wrap things up. I don't want to take too much more time, but where do you see the future of like work? Like, is it going to be what you're building? Is it something that's not there yet? Is it like people laying in bed working? Is it people like driving in their car working? Like, what do you think is going to be like our future, like of work? Like Zoom kind of came out of, like people, once the pandemic hit, Zoom just kind of became a thing, but there's so much more to this. And like you showed a preview, like with the desk, you're rethinking like what the actual desk is, but like, where do you see people in like 10 years, 20 years?
I'll give a two-part answer to this. I think part one is just physically. I think I don't have a super clear vision on exactly what this will look like, but I think in the future, your desk should be, your workstation should be a lot more. You should feel much more immersed than you are today. It shouldn't be just like it's like a little screen that you. I mean, people are making bigger and bigger screens, but it shouldn't just be this like screen that you're looking at. You should probably engage your senses in a more intense way than it is currently. I think in terms of workplace collaboration, again, I don't know what this is exactly, but it'll have to be some kind of breakthrough in which you just feel like you're actually talking with the person, and you should somewhat believe that that they're actually there, and vice versa. Part two of this question is, I think one thing I'm starting to observe after doing a lot of remote work is that when you're meeting in person, it feels like you go to work and it feels like work is work, and you kind of take everything for granted. You kind of take meetings for granted. You kind of just assume that these things have to be work has to happen the way it is happening today. But I think in the future, work will be a lot of work that people are currently doing can be automated in some way. And I think if you just think about all the meetings that you're on, what percent of the time do you have to what percent of the time do you have to actually be there physically, and what percent of the time, and wording this poorly, but what portion of your hours could be automated in some way using like some kind of AI, whether that's like, the GPT today or a future version of it. I think people are becoming more and more aware that a lot of just meeting minutes are just very ineffective, and that'll tend to go away. And when that does happen, then it'll really drastically change the way work is done, either by reducing everyone's hours greatly or just causing a lot of disruption to the workforce. Really hard to predict what will happen, but I think a lot of interesting things are about to happen in the next few years.
I've got another question on the remote work. I also have a remote team, and I'm kind of curious about how you built your remote team. Are you personally using like LinkedIn to source people, or are you using other methods? I don't know, Reddit and taking applications. But what are your favorite ways of like building your team?
We're at a size right now. So Lumina's right now just under 20 people. And I think this is the probably from a team building perspective, the most fun time in a company's history in which everyone still knows each other and everyone is connected up to the company where they're referring their friends. So it's all referrals right now. I think at the 50 plus stage, you have to do more at scale recruiting methods like LinkedIn and whatnot. That gets trickier. It's hard to retain your culture and whatnot. But at least right now, yeah, just word of mouth referrals.
How do you structure compensation? Do you like pay per hour, or is it like equity? What? Because if you're recruiting friends and local Americans and such, it'd be pretty expensive. What's your approach on that?
Yeah, we actually have a lot of team members that are overseas. So we have we do our manufacturing in Shenzhen, China. So we have a lot of people along that time zone band. But in terms of compensation, it's salaries and then salary plus equity for some team members.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Raymond, for doing this. It was really awesome to have you on, and I use your camera quite a bit, so it's awesome. And I see the software updates that are happening so frequently in it. But thank you again for having you on, and we'll probably do an edit of it, and then we'll post it onto the YouTube channel. We'll clean it up a little bit, but awesome. This was amazing, and I love the camera, and I feel like I don't know, really interesting story. I like that you spoke about bootstrapping a lot. That's it's a lot of people don't hear about it in Silicon Valley anymore. It's you bootstrap a little bit, and then you get some funding, and then you're off to the races. A lot of companies. So
yeah, well, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much.